and 10 to 10, 3 taps on the shoulder, jump again. Swam towards the boat, their little tin can fishing boat, and convincing, when I got to the boat, I was convincing the guy to slide into the water, get into the water. He didn't understand a word I
Yeah.
was saying. It was like
You
a
didn't pull your
lot of
classic
waves.
from SAR school, did you?
No, I didn't. I didn't yank him out of the boat. But
Welcome to the Calm and the Chaos podcast, where we discuss untold heroic experiences and dive into the mindset of the Navy's elite rescue swimmers. Hosted by former U.S. Navy Aviation Rescue Swimmer, Mount Everest solo summiteer, and best-selling author Brian Dickinson.
Huck Collins. Oh my gosh. So 22 years in the Navy, half enlisted, aviation rescue swimmer, half as an officer, retired as a lieutenant, just had some amazing experiences. What you had sent me was, I loved it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to get you on and just have this conversation because it shows, just how unique our job is, and you never know what's going to happen. But we'll get to all that. I'm excited to see you. I haven't seen you since '93, so thank you for being on the podcast.
yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's funny because I have a few pictures. Back then we didn't have internet or smartphones or anything, thank goodness. But we had like we bought those disposable cameras, when we did our SAR jumps, and I have some of those pictures still, and I'll overlay them on here. But you and I did jumps out of the H3 together. We're hoisting up. You're like twice as big as me. You're like wrapped around me. You just have to really find me in there because I was just a little schmorker. It's tiny back then, and probably still am in comparison to normal humans. But yeah. So for those that don't know you, tell us about yourself. Where'd you grow up?
Grew up mainly in Colorado. So I was born in California. My dad served in the Air Force for a little bit. So I, lived in California, Guam, Utah, and then he did the guard in Colorado for a little bit. So pretty much from Fort Collins all the way down to Walsenburg, Colorado. I pretty much lived in every major city in between. And then that was up to, I'd say, junior high. So lived Colorado, Missouri, Texas, and then junior high through my senior year, lived in Thornton, Colorado.
Wow. How was that moving around so much? Is that tough?
It was a little rough. During that time, it was my dad was a master plumber. So, just trying to find a job at that time. It was a little hard for him. So we did a lot of moving around and trying to stay close to family.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a good childhood? Like, do you have like good memories or?
Oh yeah, I have some awesome memories of childhood. Like for example, sixth grade. One of the things that you do in sixth grade in the elementary school is spend some time up in the mountains for a week. You learn how
Nice.
to navigate. You learn how that they have an obstacle course in the trees. Learn about the stars, the constellations. So it was pretty awesome. And I think that's what helped me go through, like that phase in aircrew school, and then also SEER school is just a piece of cake.
Yeah. Besides getting interrogated.
Yeah, the opposite of that.
Well, that's awesome. Did you were in Orlando, right, for boot camp?
Yep.
I wonder how much overlap, because were we in aircrew together or was it just SAR? Trying to
I
remember.
think it was just SAR.
Yeah.
I know they had a couple classes, ramping up during the that
Mhm.
time period. So I don't remember aircrew school, you being in the aircrew school class.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look at the old pictures. But yeah, so we were in SAR school together. How was that experience for you?
Actually, I thought the water part, the moulage, the first day part was just a piece of cake. When it came down to the running piece, that's where I really felt it. So I was in the first class was the 9318. So I got moved to roll to the next class, the 9319, due to stress fractures. So I was one of the ones that lined up, on the sidewalk, and they come out and say, "Hey, is anybody injured? Anybody need to see a corpsman?" So I was one of the ones that raised my hand. And of course, sent me over to medical. They gave me the old vitamin M, that cures all,
Yeah.
and, after that, I was like, that's it. But during that entire phase, rescue swimmer school, when it came to the run piece, I knew after I was done at the end of the day, I definitely had to ice, heat. I did everything I could just to get through. But the water work, um, the multis, all that stuff it was a breeze for me. Could have been because of my background before. So I learned how to swim when I was 14. Um, and then by the time I was 16, certified as a lifeguard, and then instructor after that. And then I worked for Waterworld in Colorado. So I did that for a couple
Wow,
seasons.
that's cool.
And of course, you're jumping into the wave pool. You pass some people who put on a backboard. So a lot of rescues in a water park.
Yeah, so you had that water confidence going in.
Different trainings. So you have the American Red Cross, and then you had Ellis training as well. For the first aid part, we did have, and he would teach us everything. So it was really cool.
Wow. This was Waterworld?
Yeah, Waterworld.
Wow. It seems like that should be like the prep course for all rescue swimmer training.
Yeah. They had a couple wave pools. When that usually went, that's where you saw most of the injuries, because you got a whole bunch of a lot of big people that are in the deep end, and that wave comes and it pushes all the big people to the kids. And then, of course, they collide and usually a backboard.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, and I would agree with your own self-assessment that you were solid in the water. We were, I think, going back and forth on Facebook, but the one thing that goes top of mind is during that multi when the dude wouldn't get out of the raft, you just came out of nowhere, reached up, just grabbed him by the back and threw him across, like all of his gear, all the flight gear, everything, helmet, just threw him across. Like even the instructors were just like, holy crap. Like that was just pure strength. One of the coolest things I think most had seen. So none of us could really compete with you there, but we had to do it the old school way. But yeah, you were definitely solid.
And we definitely had a strong team.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good group, and it split half. Now were you an AW?
No, I was AT.
Yeah, that's what I
So
thought.
I actually utility crewman, worked on H3s. Um, my first command, after rescue swimmer school, went up to Millington, Tennessee for it was 27 weeks for AVA school, and then after that went to Jax for rappel school up to Maine for SEER school, and then came back and traveled up to my first command, Oceana SAR,
Nice. Now where is that located?
in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Yeah.
Nice. Well, tell us about that.
So Oceana Star is just a little, called it the barn, little hangar. Housed two UH-3H aircraft. Also a little fixed wing aircraft, a little Cessna. And during that time period, we do a lot of cross training. So when I came out of Oceana Star to go to HC2 with the Fleet Angels up in Norfolk, Virginia, I was already hydraulic contam qualified, tire wheel qualified, CDI for avionics. I had all these qualifications that as soon as I rolled into HC2, somebody went down, one of the crewmen in Bahrain for Det 2. And they're like, hey, all we have to do is just sign them off because you just checked in. And they asked me if I can go out there and relieve the person. I was like, yeah, let's do it. So it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
Did a deployment out in Bahrain then at HC2 and did two of them. And that second one was, after that, came back to HC2 or from Bahrain. And in 2001, when I got orders, a couple of us got orders to STAR School. And then the message came in that I got picked up for the Aviation Enlisted Commissioning Program.
Oh, awesome. So, okay.
Yeah.
Well, before we go there, let's talk about that very unique rescue opportunity you had over there. That was in the Gulf, right?
Yeah, that was my last 6-month deployment out in Bahrain. It was January 8th, 2000. So when we took off, we had it was the off-going OIC, his last flight, my last flight out in Bahrain, the oncoming OIC, and we had the crew chief who was a dry crewman. He was a third class dry crewman. I was a second class at the time, and I was the swimmer, designated swimmer. So we had about 6 passengers. We had 6 passengers, about 3,000 pounds of mail and cargo. We took off from Bahrain. We were heading up north to the Gulf to hit a couple ships to drop off packs, mail, cargo. Once we hit Farsi, so it was roughly around 10 o'clock in the morning. Farsi Island is roughly, I think it's about 122 miles, somewhere around there, north of Bahrain. And we were on the west side of Farsi Island. As soon as we cleared Farsi Island, we start heading to the right to go towards our first ship. And then the pilot, the hack, who's the off-going OIC, is in the right seat. And he noticed on the right side of the aircraft, there are a couple people waving in a little boat. So, the crew chief, myself, we look out the door, look out the window, and we're like, hey, yeah, they're waving at us. And he's like, okay, let's go check them out. So, he actually circles around, comes back around, and kind of creeps up to them, just in a high hover, and then slowly comes down. As soon as he starts coming down, of course, he has to pop back up. We're like, hey, climb a little bit, because, you're going to capsize this little thing.
Yeah.
So you got 2 people in there. It's a little tin can aluminum fishing boat with a little motor attached to the back. And you can see their lips are just chapped. It's like they do not look good. They look hungry.
You could see that from the helo, from the cabin.
Oh, yeah, it was really evident that something was wrong. The motor wasn't running, so you could tell they really didn't have much in their little boat. So what happened was the hack, he called the ship. Ship was approximately about 20 nautical miles away. And he said, hey, we have a couple people, look like they're stranded. And he gave him the lat long where they're at. And he said, we'll be play on scene commander. I'm like, okay. At that time came up around, and we're like, hey, how about if we drop some water bottles? Because one thing that we do carry with us, or that we did, was a huge cooler of water bottles. So at the beginning, before we actually take off from Bahrain, we have frozen water bottles, and then we have the non-frozen or unfrozen water bottles. So we put the frozen on the bottom, and the ones that aren't frozen on the top. We put that up closer to the pilot seats near the the upper pack store, and that's where we put it at, right in front of the first sonar station. So we only have one sonar station or sonar seat near the window in the H3. The layout, we have 3 troop seats on the port side, and we have 1 troop seat right behind the sonar seat. The way we had it laid out was the middle troop seat on the port side was up, and the one in the back behind the sonar seat was up as well. So we can put the mail bags and all that stuff right underneath the main gearbox, make a little walkway, and in the very back next to the equipment bay or the equipment rack back there, we had some mail as well. The SAR curtain, the raft, my SAR gear was back there as well. So we're like, hey, let's put some water, drop some water off to them. We didn't have a bag to drop it in, so I asked one of the passengers for their souvenir bag. So they were gracious enough to give us their souvenir bag, filled it up with non-frozen water bottles, tied it off, and we went back over to a hover, right over them, high hover, and then we just drop it right over the boat. When we dropped it
down, you just dropped it.
Right. We didn't hoist it down because we didn't want them to hang on the hook.
Yeah, sure.
Anything.
Yep.
So we dropped it, and what happened was the back split open. Water bottles, few of them jumped. Few of them fell into the water, overboard, over their boat, and then some went into their boat. One of the guys decided to jump in after the ones that went into the water. So it's
genius.
So by this time, the pilot's already slid to the left, keeping him in sight because this guy just jumped in the water. We want to make sure he makes it back to his boat.
Yep.
So at this time, he has his water bottles. He tries to swim back to the boat, and the boat kept moving further and further away. Mm-hmm. So the sea state probably around that time was maybe a 3, 2, 3, somewhere around there. You had some clouds in the area. You had sporadic rain showers. It was January timeframe. So the water wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cold. And we noticed that this guy was just not going to make it to his boat. And it was
a rotor wash pushing the boat away as well.
We were far enough from that. It was the swells that were actually
pushing away.
So the aircraft commander, we're like, hey, sir, this doesn't look good at all. He is not going to make it back to his boat.
Oops, so we kind of caused this, but
yeah. So he's like, all right, rig for rescue. So, by this time I'm getting, ready in the back, stripped down in all glory, put on my wetsuit. And then the aircraft commander is calling the ship saying, hey, what's going on? He's getting ready to jump a swimmer. So he comes around as soon as I'm all dressed out, put my fins on. As soon as I have my mask on, it's already 10 and 10. It's like 3 taps on the shoulder and I'm out. So I'm out the door. I'd say the boat was probably about 40, 50 feet away from the survivor. And the survivor was just outside the rotor wash. Mm-hmm. So I was heading towards him. So kind of like towards him toward the right front of the aircraft, and swimming towards him is like, I can see him. No, I don't. I can see him, just like the state of the swell. No, I don't. I can see him. No, I don't. I was like, I don't see him when I'm supposed to. So at that time, I dived down to where his last position was. And as I was swimming underwater, my hand hit his arm. So my arm was like his arm, my arm touched. I grabbed it, brought him up to the surface of the water. Wow. And he had choked up water, gasp of air. And he was just exhausted. He was just beat. He was limp as a noodle. So it was an easy cross chest carry to the hook. I did call for, ready for pickup after I cleared him, hooked him up, and I went up with him into the aircraft. Now, the way, like I described the troop seats, we had 3 up front, 3 in the back on the port side. The other troop seat was up, right? It was stowed up in the up position. And when we got into the aircraft, I put him on the forward part of the aft troop seat, right next to the male. So I stuck him right there. Mm-hmm. And then I went to the SAR curtain, grabbed a blanket out of there, gave him a blanket, and then, gave him a water bottle as well. By this time, the aircraft already came back around, and 10 and 10, 3 taps on the shoulder, jump again, swam towards the boat, their little tin can fishing boat. And when I got to the boat, I was convincing the guy to slide into the water, get into the water. He didn't understand a word I was saying. It was like,
you didn't pull your classic from SAR school, did you?
No, I didn't. I didn't yank him out of the boat. But I did convince him. I was like, hey, go up there with your buddy, blankets, water. Yeah. So when I did this, he decided to slide into the water. So I don't know if it was really water. I don't know.
Yeah, he thought there was some booze up there.
I cleared him, cross chest carry. And one thing about this survivor is beginner swimmers, when they learn how to swim, the first thing that you try to teach them the flutter kick, right? But typically they do the bicycle kick. So this is what this guy was doing. And he was so short that when he was doing the bicycle kick, he was kicking my right knee. And I was like, come on, man, this is killing me. So as I was, after, ready for pickup and I'm throwing him to the hook, I was just like, hey, stop kicking me, stop kicking me. Of course, he didn't understand what I was saying because he kept doing it. So I decided to loosen my grip. And instantly, his initial reaction was both hands grabbed my right arm and he was just stiff as a board. He stopped kicking. So took him to the hook, hooked up, went up into the aircraft, and then I put him on the opposite side of the troop seat, opposite of his buddy, so near the SAR curtain. Covered him up with a blanket, gave him some water. By this time, we weren't that far from the ship. So the aircraft commander, the hack, actually called for green deck. We went, landed on the deck. The corpsman checked over the survivors to make sure that they're good to go. After he looked at the first one, that was closer to the male. He went to the second one that was closer to, so they actually sat on the troop seat. So one of them was closer, that one that was sitting next to the male. He was sitting on the edge there, and his buddy was sitting on just on next to him to his right. So as soon as he finished and he went to the second survivor, the corpsman was checking him over. This time the crew chief I was staring at the crew chief and those two and the corpsman. And the first survivor that I got, so he said, pointed to the American flag on the crew chief's flight suit, and he pointed to it. It's like number one. So I was like, that feels good. That's awesome.
What else is he gonna do?
Yeah, I know. So I escorted the survivors, and the corpsman was following as well to the hangar. Went into the hangar while the crew chief handles the stuff outside. Captain of the ship was inside the hangar waiting to greet us. We also had some other folks waiting there with some food, with some more water, and some dry clothing as well. And then what we did was just handed them off, told them, what happened, and we hopped back on board and we took off and completed our mission. So total hours flown that day was around 7 hours. And that's not including, landing on the deck, refueling, emptying out the aircraft, loading the aircraft, stuff like that. So it was a long day. But yeah, that later we found out that they were two Iranians. What happened was the ship actually got to their boat, fixed their boat, and sent them on their way. They removed all the contraband from their boat. They were two Iranians. They were 150 miles adrift for 3 days. So they were out there for 3 days.
Oh.
So it was pretty awesome. A good feeling.
Yeah, that's interesting. I got launched on a similar, but it was Iraqis and it was a fisher boat, and their boat had sank, like half the crew eaten by sharks. But it was a bad scenario. Like we couldn't even hoist them. We had to have a Zodiac or a Reb launch, have a surface swimmer, just because want to deglove their skin or try to bring them up the hoist. But yeah, I wonder if that's pretty common in the fact that he wasn't even a good swimmer. That's pretty brave or stupid. Somewhere in between, like go out in the Persian Gulf and don't even know how to swim. But I guess who are we? That's why we're there to help. No, that's awesome. So during all of that, it went from like, let's investigate this boat. They're waving at us. It could just be like waving hi. Nope, waving in distress. Next thing, you're trying to help them out. You're doing some humanitarian effort, trying to hydrate them, get those lips a little hydrated and plumped up. And then next thing, one decides that water's so valuable, I'm going in after it. And by the way, I can't swim. So in your mind, when all of this, because you're watching it unravel, just in real time, what's going through your head?
Well, through my head, when I was watching him swim, initially he started off fine. And then it was just like going downhill real quick. So you can see it wasn't making any progress. So in my mind, it's like we were feeding the information to, the hack and saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Are we seeing the same thing? And it's like, hey, I think it's time to dress out, and that's when the aircraft commander's like, he made the call, rig for rescue. So when he was able to see everything too, I think that was pretty much the go ahead for that.
Yeah, for sure. No, you did the right thing. I'm glad it all worked out. And then, typically when you do a rescue, you head back and flight's over and another crew will come out and take over for what you're doing. But you guys didn't have that luxury. But during that time, a lot of times you have, the moments of being able to think about what just went down while you're just replace that with, doing this next mission set, delivering cargo and packs. Later, when you finally did, after like an 8, 9 hour day, when you got back, was there that time when you could just decompress and just, think about the whole scenario?
Yeah, actually, I mean, it was a good feeling. So we, it was pumped up on adrenaline
Hmm.
initially, especially that first jump out of the aircraft, towards the survivor. That was just, I mean, that was a good feeling, right?
Hmm.
Afterwards, you start going down that, the adrenaline is wearing off. Now it's like trying to focus more on the job at hand is delivering that pax mail cargo. Um, and that's exactly what we did. So compartmentalization was key during that time frame. Afterwards, it was like, we all celebrated. I mean, how often does a dry crewman actually get a rescue?
Hmm.
I mean, that's pretty awesome in itself too. I mean, we had, I think, 4 or 5 dry crewmen in the command at the time, and we afterwards we just go out and celebrate, right? Get a beer. That's how we decompressed at the end of the day.
That's true.
Um,
You were shore based, right? It's not like you're going back to a carrier and you couldn't get a beer.
yeah. So shore based in Bahrain,
Yeah,
staying at the Manai Plaza at the time. So yeah,
that's awesome. Very cool. So you got back from deployment. You then got into the officer.
the Aviation Enlisted Commissioning Program.
Okay. Yeah, tell us
Yeah.
about that.
So it's pretty much you're part of the ROTC unit, trying to get your degree, so you get the commission, and then go to flight school in Pensacola. Oh, back
Okay.
to that rescue. One of the lessons learned that you mentioned already was maybe we should have held off on dropping the water bottles into the boat, and just wait for the ship to arrive. But
I know,
that's
but
something.
you never know. That just seems like you have the resources. You don't know you had no idea what their situation was. So yeah, that's one of those things. Yeah, you can question that, but I think anyone in your place would have done the same thing. Just
Yeah.
kind of common sense.
And the good thing about it is something we learned, and as air crewmen, is how we work as a group. You know, the crew resource management or air crew coordination training. The SAG clam, DAM class, or McSalad, whatever you want to call it, the acronym, and how we worked as a team. But it was a team decision of, hey, yeah, we're going to drop some water bottles down.
Hmm. Yeah, it's not like you
But
were using your own name, hucking them out the door.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. So then you
So
became an officer.
yeah, so I was commissioned back in December of '03. Went to Pensacola, did the ground school first. This is before the hurricanes rolled through in '04-05 timeframe, I believe. I think it was 5. No, it was 4. Somewhere around there. But anyway, went through the ground phase next to the old OCS, or I think they were still there. Learn about engines and all that stuff, the stuff that I already knew is a piece of cake. And then went to primary, the BT2 fixed wing, learned how to fly fixed wing aircraft, and then learned how to fly the helo trainers, TH-57, and then went to HSL 48, actually HSL 40, the RAG, and then to 48 afterwards. Did a couple deployments, did my 2P deployment there, went to the Gulf. And the second deployment, we did the AFRICOM Partnership Station, where we went pretty much around Africa and stopped at different ports, did some exercises. So I got to see a lot of places. And the cool thing about it was now I'm up front and I have the crewmen in the back and the swimmers, and actually, helping them, trying to see them succeed. And because
Mhm.
that's what I wanted for them, is for my crewmen to succeed. And I had a good group of crewmen. I mean, they were strong, very knowledgeable, and I trusted them wholeheartedly in the back of the aircraft.
Yeah.
Um, and
What a
vice
mutual
versa.
respect too. How often do you have former rescue swimmer who's now in control up front. So that's pretty unique. That's awesome.
And then afterwards, finished up with HSL 48, or the second cruise was my hack cruise, so that was pretty interesting. But yeah, it was interesting. It was a great learning experience at that time. After 48, went to Jacksonville University, and as a freshman advisor and also the aviation officer as well. So had a group of ROTC students that wanted to become aviators. So helped them out, went to Jax, take them to Jax to the pool. I had tons of flight suits left over. So I put them in flight suits, even though that they would be really big on them. They were drag suits, so they get them used to that mile swim, especially. So that's what I enjoyed doing at that time, was trying to level them up and their swimming abilities as well.
Yeah.
And then after that, went to Bahrain again, my last tour as the force protection officer for a couple years. So I did that without the family. So that was the okay I give, and it's time to retire.
Yeah. Yeah, that must have been tough. Did you have any rescues or anything close to a rescue as a pilot?
No, actually, no.
No medevacs or anything? It'd be interesting to have it from both perspectives. Obviously, you trained a ton doing it, doing jumps and everything else. Just be so interesting. Just those two dynamics, seeing it from both ends, is very rare.
Yeah. I mean, there were times we were, almost called to launch, getting prepared to launch, but nothing came from it.
I wonder from a pilot perspective, because obviously if you're dressing out, you're ready to jump, there's an adrenaline spike, you're doing your job type thing. From a pilot, I wonder how that differs.
It differs quite a bit from the rescue swimmer point of view, or rescue swimmer lens. You're looking more of making sure you know your process and procedures. You still need to know about the aircraft, so the pilots do as well. The stuff in the back in the SAR curtain, you have to know everything about the SAR curtain. And then for the pilot phase is more of, hey, we need to know the winds aloft. We need to know where to get gas. Who's who in the zoo? Where's everybody else at? Do we have any other assets available? What's our no-go criteria? We got to get all these surface temp, air temps, winds aloft, all that stuff before you actually launch. And then also your weight and balance as well.
Yep. All the radio, everyone has a job. It's amazing just to see all of that come together, and everyone is just so professional in what they're doing. So did you get out in 2015? Did I do the math right?
Yep. Got out February 1st, 2015.
Nice. So I always say being a SAR swimmer is the ultimate form of serving others. And just curious, because you were serving at both capacities, enlisted and officer, and now you've been out for quite some time, a decade. Have you found kind of that, I don't know, that drive to serve others in the life that you're living now outside the military?
I've always had that, service of others. Even when I was enlisted, not only was I was doing the enlisted part, with the commands, I was actually a lifeguard, water safety instructor, and a swim coach for the city of Virginia Beach for a couple of years. And then when I went out to Bahrain, my last stint, as a force protection officer for a couple of years, I was a swim coach out there for the Dodge School. And then at that time frame as well, started, helping out with the Florida Youth Challenge Academy. So those are the kids that, go off the beaten path, get in trouble, wind up in juvie. So you're trying to help them out, trying to get them back on that right path. So I did that for a little bit, even after 2015. And then, in the corporate world, I've been with a couple companies in the corporate world and different leadership positions as well, management positions. The biggest things for me with the team dynamic, I still want to give back things that I've learned in the military, like the sad clam or the mixed salad, whatever you want to call it, an acronym. I still use that to this day because you can use it in every situation. Like, for example, communication. Communication is always a big thing, right? So communication is a hub of the wheel. The rest of it are spokes of the wheel. Take out that hub, communication, what happens to the wheel is going to fall apart.
Yep.
So that's the biggest thing I teach the team, and also give them back in a way of, hey, I've been around the world. I've seen a lot of things. I've achieved a lot of my goals. Now what are your goals? What is your short-term, intermediate, long-term goals? How can we get you to your goals? Some people have never been out of Florida. Some people never been out of the city.
I know.
So it's like, how do you get them past that point to look outside the box? And that's my goal with my teams. And I try to develop
You can
them
figure
to,
that out. Let me know.
yeah.
That is a challenge. I mean, you can be in a small town, you mean whatever town, you never left, but then you think you know everything. It's like you get perspective by, having those experiences and doing some travel and realizing, nope, the world is bigger.
Yeah. And also let them know that I'm not perfect. I don't know everything, but I'm here to help. So that's the biggest thing.
That's awesome. You want to do something fun? You want to do a hypothetical scenario?
Sure.
Sure. All right. I have a list of different rescue scenarios, and you're going to have to go 20 years back and be a rescue swimmer. Okay. Do you still fit in your wetsuit?
Not right now. I was thin back then.
Oh, probably none of us. Well, they fit them right out of SARS school, remember? So we're all like kind of like scrawny down, young, and then you start filling out, as you get out in the fleet, and this thing doesn't fit anymore. So I would hope it doesn't fit. Okay, let's do. So tomorrow is the episode that's I'm gonna drop is Larry Grossman's about rescuing the crew from the USS Bonefish when it was on fire. So we're going to give you something similar. Okay, you ready?
All right.
Okay, here's the scenario. A small submarine suffers a catastrophic failure and partially sinks in shallow waters. Partially sinks. Crew members escape to the surface but are scattered and in distress. So you're flying out. That's all you know. What's going through your mind?
The first thing is how many survivors escaped, or was able to get out of the submarine. Another one is, again, who's who in the zoo. Are there any other SAR assets available out there right now? Are there any? How far off the coast are we? Is Coast Guard around? So that's some of the things I'm looking at, and just thinking it from a crew chief perspective as well.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things probably look at as well. Potentially using a net. Probably not using the litter so much because there's a lot of people. So I want to get them out of the water as fast as I can. Then, of course, I'm going to take other environmental factors in play. Can I see whitecaps on the water? You said it's shallow water. So there's probably not very many whitecaps, but a submarine is pretty big. So there's some of the things that are going through my head at that time. So definitely probably going to need some help. And hopefully there's some other vessels around, some other ships. Most likely there are. But if we can get a rib in the water or another boat in the water, that'd be the best scenario versus, getting a jump in the swimmer, and you can use the aircraft as like an on-scene commander type thing.
Nice. Yeah, I can tell like you look at these scenarios now from the lens of both. Like you can go back as in the doorway, or you can be, at the hack in controls. So you definitely have a unique vantage point of living both lives. So that's awesome. And it's awesome that it's been 32 years since, we hung out together. And you can go back to that state of mind. Like it's never going to leave you. And it's, you probably use a lot of these same methodologies in just normal life as you're assessing the situation and reassessing and just understanding, like you said, who's in the zoo.
Who's who in the zoo?
Who's who in the zoo. Yep. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, you've had incredible experiences that not many people will ever, even understand. They can't understand it because it's very unique. But with all that, what's a bit of wisdom that you would want to leave our listeners with?
I would say 4 things.
You can only have one. No, you can do 4. Go for it.
So the first one is, if a pilot ever hands you a camera to take make sure you get a selfie. Those who don't know. The second one would be, always check your flight boots to make sure there's no crumbs of sea dye marker inside. Because if not, you're going to be the highlight of the beach for probably a couple weeks. And the third one is, before you put your flight suit on, make sure it's not sewed at the bottom of the end of the pant leg or the flight suit leg. And the fourth one, I actually learned this from a book back in '98, is have a life mission statement. So you have major companies out there that have a mission statement, right? Successful companies. Why don't you have a mission statement for yourself? So, for example, my life mission statement is to put my God-given talents to use each and every day, to give back more than what I take, and to improve my relationship with my God, family, and friends. So,
Awesome.
I think it's important to have that statement. There's sometimes it could be challenging, but you always look at it and say, okay, how can I do this? I have this gift. How can I help others? Yeah. So that's just me in a nutshell.
That's some of the best wisdom I've heard in quite some time. It's amazing because you're right. Like businesses and so many of these other areas in life, you have all these grand strategic plans, everything else. And then the things that matter most to us, our marriage, our faith, our, just relationships and everything. And we just kind of wing it every day. And when you can take that more analytical approach and just document it, have those life goals. Jeff Bast, actually, he was a first class LPO on my second deployment. He taught me that stuff and, goal setting and, monitoring them and readjusting them. And I've always used that. It's amazing when, someone can have that impact in your life, just an area you were missing, you can kind of flounder, but when you actually have it documented, it's amazing what you can accomplish. And then even in business, when I was working in high tech, I always encourage people to keep their resumes up to date and to even take interviews, because one, maybe this isn't the best job for you, or it's going to validate that it is. But building that resume, it's amazing how much stuff you accomplish and forget. And you don't want to camp in that and get all a big head or anything, but it's an opportunity to really just, validate yourself, like you're doing a good job, or maybe there's areas of correction or whatever. But yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to journaling. And I just think it's very, very healthy. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, cool. Awesome. Huck, it was amazing to have you on the show and just amazing to have a conversation with you. It's crazy how 3 decades can just blow by.
That is crazy.
Well, for everyone else, thanks for joining, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Calm in the Chaos podcast. Please subscribe to be notified of future episodes, and if you enjoyed what you just heard, please leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. Until next time, get out there and make a difference so others may live.